the reason why I haven't bought our first home is like when you literally do the numbers and you see how much you're paying back just for your own mortgage, like it literally caps up like anything that you can invest in. When you really understand the numbers, it makes me cringe to think we would pay $5,000 a month just on a mortgage to live there, and then we're sort of stuck.
$5,000 a month too for like a shit place in reality. The reality is when you feel like you have a lack of when you're younger. I always wanted what I perceived the rich people had, and that was that driver. It's like, I want to work more, I want to invest because I want that thing.
When you actually just commit to a goal and go like all in, it actually can happen quite quickly.
Super quick.
When you do get that taste of it starting to compound, you just want to go harder.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. We're back. It's been a little while since we've recorded an episode. Joel, it's good to be back in the studio. We have a few guests today. Joel doesn't answer when I ask him. But today we have some clients, good friends, and someone I grew up with out in the Hawkesbury. Kayla Stanley. Welcome to the Flamingo Sundays podcast. Not Flamingo Sundays, Flamingo Property Investing.
No, thanks
podcast.
very much. Thanks very much for having me on here. Very excited to share the journey, and
it's been some journey.
It has. I think we probably didn't talk there for 15 years or something, and then come back full circle.
Scared you too much in primary school, high school.
Yeah, but year 7, year 8, year 9, or whatnot through Windsor High, we met there, and then got in contact again to buy a few properties with you.
Let's talk through it. So. You guys, and when I say guys, Gabe is also here over in the darkness. We met a few years ago after many, many years of not talking. Grew up in a similar area. We actually spent quite a lot of time together in school for like 3 or 4 years. And we had similar friends group, and I had a girlfriend at the time that was in the same group. And to see what you have done now is next level. Like a few years ago, no properties, good incomes. Now almost 3 properties, even better incomes. And yous are like so committed and focused on growing your wealth because yous have got this incredible earning capacity through your jobs, which we're going to talk through. But just to give everyone context, let's go back. So you grew up in the Hawkesbury in Pitt Town?
Yeah, absolutely. Grew up in Pitt Town. So grew up there, bounced around in a few places throughout the Hawkesbury. Pitt Town mainly was where I grew up.
Yeah.
Went to Pitt Town Primary School, and then went to Windsor High. Basically made a transition too and went to Seven Hills Sports High. I think pretty similar when you had left Windsor High School as well.
We left for different reasons, but that's all right.
I don't know. I was going down a pretty bad path too with the alcohol and things like that. So that's why a big change to continue with sport.
Yeah.
But yeah, very similar growing up in terms of Hawkesbury friend group. I think, what our environments were growing up on the weekends and things like that were very
We were just
similar.
chatting, like, I say it all the time. Like, I thought Rich was a Land Cruiser and a boat and living on the river.
Pitt Town Bottoms, and like I still for like 4 years when I met Gabe, I'm like, I'm getting a Land Cruiser. That is the car I want, and I still love those. It's just like your perception changes even when I moved from Sydney and now, which we'll get to, but working for a global US company, my eyes have just like expanded to what even the universe and the world has to offer in terms of like wealth creation as well.
Crazy, right?
It's
when
wild.
When you get exposed to other things, you're like, oh, maybe a Land Cruiser isn't all that crash hot, even a Sahara. So when you left school, like we obviously grew up in the same areas, you went to school, you went to the Sports High, and then you didn't get into what you're doing now straight off the bat. You went through some other careers first. Talk through where you started, and then we'll go through the transition to
absolutely.
where
So
you are now.
From a very young age, grew up with my grandparents and sort of had that upbringing around, we never went without with anything or anything like that, but it was very much like, I would say we got everything we needed, but it was that back of my mind was like, I never want to end up on Centrelink or something like that or feel really strict on money. And even like a big pivotal point for me on the money side of why I found tech sales because I always wanted to earn more money.
Yeah.
But I even remember as a young kid putting you had to put $100 into your CBA bank and you'd get like interest, like you'd get like $10. And I remember building that nest egg up and I was getting like a couple $100 every month from CBA to like basically put my money in there to save money. So that was like a bit of an unlock in terms of like compounding for me.
And this is from your first job in school or when you left school?
Working at KFC, that was my first job.
I didn't know that.
What
KFC?
At the McGrath Hill one.
Oh yeah, the new one.
Yeah, so I worked there for a couple of years. And
just
loved
burger,
that.
thanks.
100% used to take the fries home after dinner, after the shift. But then I basically moved to Seven Hills Sports High School and got a job at the YMCA. But I left school and didn't finish year 12 and dropped out because I was like, want to be a PT, want to be a lifeguard, and I got a job.
Because you were super sporty in school, right? And when you go to the hills, that's where like all the footballers went and like anyone who was
exactly.
chasing it.
But the reason why I bring up the YMCA is because I was like on my since like 16 to like 20, I've always been on like a $60 to $70 per hour job because of like PT being like one-on-one or something like that. So for my age, I always have felt like I'd earned quite a high hour wage.
More than KFC. That's
exactly.
For sure. Yeah.
And that sort of, I was able to save quite a bit at a younger age. But then it hit this point where it's like I'm doing the early morning shifts, late night shifts, and it was not a lifestyle I wanted to continue living.
But you were earning good money, right?
Earning good money and everything like that. Eventually, I pivoted to getting a job at Penrith Panthers, which I was really fortunate to be able to do, and quite a funny story
You're the mascot,
there.
weren't you?
Yeah, I started university as a late stage adult because I didn't finish year 12.
Right.
And in my first year, right, you meant to do like a go get a job and do a trial in your last semester of university.
Like practical work sort of thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I did that in my first unit and got a job at Penrith Panthers. And when they gave me the job, they're like, "So you finish uni?" I'm like, "I'm in my first semester." So I fully hacked the system.
What did you study though?
So,
and on that, why did you go to uni?
So yeah, that's a great question actually. So when I was doing the fitness, doing PT, I actually started like a boot camp, and it was CS Fitness. And I think one of my slogans were like, "Make the fat cry, the sweat cry." What was it, Gabe? It was a real funny slogan.
It's like sweat is tears leaving the body.
Yeah, that's how good I was at marketing. But I think a big part there was like loved helping people get fit and things like that. But I fell in love with like how do I get people to.
And that was sort
boot
of
camp.
your own little business, right?
Exactly, yeah. So it's like, had this like small ass car, put all my like, gym stuff in there, would drive down to this little church I was doing it in and everyone would come. So it was really cool, and that unlocked why I wanted to do a Bachelor of Business in university.
Ah, right.
But
So you did the PT thing, then you thought, okay, instead of doing this in someone else's gym, I'll do my own little boot camp.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah, so that sort of unlocked of like always wanting, like I still always seek to want to do my own thing. But it's always that classic thing where I look at things, you could be like, the CEO of your own idea, or you could be like a VP of a really large company, and it's like, where do you get the best skills at that time?
Yeah.
But yeah, pivoted to Penrith Panthers, worked there for about 3 years, as I was mentioning to you earlier.
I didn't even know this, yeah.
Yeah, I quit after a year and a half because I didn't want to live that corporate lifestyle. Like, hated sitting at my desk and like you had your boss looking at you when you left at 5:01. Like, but yeah, got rehired and then actually got fired, and that was sort of where my whole world shifted.
Right.
At that point, because I wasn't fully loving it though either, so I didn't actually know what I wanted to do long term.
Yeah.
I knew though, like I've always just been driven by money, like in terms of where I don't really need to love what I need to be doing.
Yeah.
I just know I want to build that lifestyle, and always growing up, I knew deep down in my soul, I didn't want to be the 20-year-old that was sort of living a great lifestyle and then sacrifice it for my 50s. Like I feel so deep in my soul. I was always like, I want to be the 40, 50-year-old where I have people over when I'm older and feel set up and then can enjoy life.
So essentially like live a little bit less in your 20s, work hard, do the double shifts like you said, test things, versus other people probably similar to your age who you probably would have seen going overseas and
it blows my mind.
Doing all the stuff, probably not committing to work as young. There's like a clear divide from the people who works lots and lived a little in their 20s versus lived a lot in their 20s and worked a little. And that gap generally gets, obviously, as compounding, right? The more you do when you're younger, the bigger that thing grows versus you're starting 10 years later, say in your early 30s. By that time, you got a missus or, a partner, you got a kid, and you've got all this life baggage and you're like behind the 8 ball. Yeah,
and as I think you would resonate with this, when you actually just commit to a goal and go like all in, it actually can happen quite quickly.
Super quick.
Like I remember and skipping a little bit ahead here, which we'll come back to, which will go to our strategy, but like when we finally committed and purchased our first property, and then we had the 70K of like equity land back in our bank like after 3 months. It's like that's how quick it can change. And obviously like I have that underlying fear of like it also can go as quick, but it's also like why not go after that, because you can either reach it or not reach it anyway. So it's just like doubling down on that goal. When you do get that taste of it starting to compound, you just want to go harder.
For sure. And I think what you said before around, and it's awesome that you're conscious about, is like all you wanted was money, all you care about is money, or something along those lines. Like the reality is when you feel like you have a lack of when you're younger, which is what I felt. We weren't poor, but I always wanted what I perceived the rich people had, and that was that driver. It's like, I want to work more. I want to invest because I want that thing.
Yeah. On that point too, another real pivotal moment for me too was one of my friends, Abby Norman, their family actually took me to Bali when I was like...
Abby Norman.
Yeah, when I was like, I think it was 12 or 13 years old or something like that. And that was my first trip outside of Australia. And I remember, like, I took my own money, but I think they had paid for, like, little parts of it, but they definitely had paid for my food, every sort of, meal that we had. And I just remember when you go obviously to Bali, and also like 15 years ago, you felt like a baller with like $1 Australian.
Yeah,
and
you
I
just
remember,
walk around with like wads of cash.
yeah. And that moment for me was really transformational too, of just like being able to want to be able to provide that to my friends and family when I get older as well.
Interesting. Okay, so Penrith Panthers happened, got sacked, pivotal moment. I got sacked from one of my, well, was my first real estate job actually, so that was a pivotal moment in my life. Where did you go to from there?
Yeah, so there was a bit of probably like 3 months there where it was really lost. Really didn't know what we wanted to do. I just pretty much met Gabe. We'd just moved to Baulkham Hills, so just left home, left the Hawkesbury. That's all like a big change in itself. We moved to Baulkham Hills.
Just for anyone who doesn't know where Baulkham Hills is, folks, when you say you leave the Hawkesbury, it's about like 3 kilometres on the outside of the Hawkesbury.
Yeah.
You're like, I'm out of here.
Like, no, that was like such a bad time. Like we were at probably Baulkham Hills for a couple months, but the reason we moved there is because I could drive to Panthers, Gabe could drive to the city.
It was like midway.
But when I got fired, we're like, okay, cool, I'm going to go find a job in the city.
Yeah.
And really it was about 8 or 9 months out prior to COVID. Yeah. And I found like just whatever job I could get.
So it would have been like 2019 or something like that?
Totally, yeah. And actually during that really lost period, Louis Henkel, like we're talking about Donnie doing the run, I went and laid turf with Louis, and Louis always I always had that back forward to go and lay turf just to keep earning money. Like I've always wanted just to keep earning money. Dad was a tradie, was from like 10 to 14, would spend the weekends even going working with him on site and things like that. So it's just like always wanted to do that. But yeah, I got a job in the interim working at O Media, which was like all the panels.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you can
was
see.
that owned by John Singleton?
Yeah. And they've I think they've just been bought
sold,
out. Yeah. But like that was an operations role. That's when I fully realised. So when I was at Panthers, I was in sales and I was like, okay, if people want something, they'll just come and do it. Like, why does there need to be a sales rep?
Yeah.
I just didn't clock in my head. And then I went to ops and I was just doing like check-in, check-out operational stuff. And I was like, you can hack the system so much in corporate when like there's just so many people doing nothing. And I wanted to do more, but it was just like you couldn't do more.
Yeah.
And I was just looking at my clock like every hour, like this is so boring. And long story short, COVID hit and so we were working at home. And as I mentioned, like sort of just met Gabe. And I kept overhearing Gabe, and she had started to work in the tech industry. And just
she's like, how many million? Oh, I just have to fly that across.
Yeah. But it was so interesting listening to her conversations, more just like the autonomy she had. I think you get treated like an adult in that sort of environment compared to what I'd been used to.
Yeah, it's probably like less hierarchical, right?
Totally.
I mean, you obviously have a hierarchy, but it's less like
it was just
report to a boss and
it was so different than like working in I think like a Coles or Woolies or something like that, where it just feels like everyone goes there to check in, check out. Whereas the tech industry is just like such big minds, innovators. It's not like it's your problem. It's like, how can we fix this? And I genuinely have been able to work in that environment the past 5 years, and it's been like a really cool unlock personally, just from a personal development perspective. But yeah, then I basically would realise, okay, I need to get back into sales. I need a KPI to actually like work as hard as I can. I realised that was
so you didn't think like maybe I should lay more turf? You're like...
No, I was just like, oh, what am I going to do long term here? But yeah, ended up finding a job through someone that Gabe actually connected me with, and they sat me down and showed me their income statement that they'd made $700,000 in 1 year. And this guy was so down to earth, like just wanting to help me, like purely not trying to show off or anything.
You know what that takes me back to? You know the Wolf of Wall Street scene where the guy's like, if you show me a payslip for $50,000 now, I'll quit my fucking job.
And I was like, how bad do you want it? And I was like, I want this bad.
Yeah.
And like anything, it's not an easy route and you got to learn the skills and everything like that. But I had never met anyone
who earned that much money.
Who had earned that
and
much
probably
money.
like you probably hear about it, but the proof of like, oh, here's how much I earned.
Totally. I couldn't believe it. Like,
because $100,000, like that was used to be my perspective. I remember my dad when he got his first, well not first, like when he hit $100,000 as income, I was probably like, I don't know, 15 or something, 16.
For sure.
And I remember hearing, I'm like, fuck, $100,000 a year.
Totally. I remember like 100K was just like the end point for me. And
then
I realized,
I couldn't fathom what happened past $100,000.
For sure. But
and the entrance caravan park as well. That's where we were, Dunleith.
Yeah, and even that jump for me when I went from like 60K and then the year after making like 100K, that's such a massive like difference of just like how you live or what you can start investing in and things like that. And I feel like on my journey from when I got into tech, I was, from Panthers, I was on 60,000 a year. Then I got my first job and I was actually on about a 70K base, but then I had 30K comms to make. But obviously
That was at oOh!media?
That was at actually Splunk. So I got my first job and at oOh!media I was on like that 60 to 80K base as well. And then, when I got into Splunk, I had hit like 150% of my number for the first year. And also I'd earned over 100K for that first time. And that was like a really cool moment.
And how old were you then?
So, I'm 28 now.
Yeah.
5 years ago.
I didn't mention that at the start. Yeah, you're only 28.
So I was 22. 3, 4, 5,
Which is
6,
young
7.
to hit that sort of income, right?
22, 23. Yeah. So
haters will say it's not true, but that's all right.
So that was really cool.
Yeah.
And then basically I was at Splunk for about a year. COVID, it was pretty crazy times.
Is that still
COVID.
advertising?
Splunk?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're a big business. They just got purchased by Cisco recently, but they're sort of one of the largest cybersecurity companies in the industry.
So it's not advertising?
What do you mean by advertising?
Like oOh!media was advertising, right? You were selling advertising?
At oOh!media I was doing advertising.
And then Splunk was the company that you went to with the guy who showed you 700.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's all right. So ops was like, I wasn't even in a sales role there. It was just like helping the people fix the panels.
Right.
So it was like, hey, it's broken.
How do you hit a quota there? You like fix so many panels?
Yeah, exactly. But jumped back into Splunk, which was the first tech job.
Right. Okay.
And made 100K my first year there, which was really cool. And so when you...
So just pause on that. For people who are in, let's say you're someone listening now works for Panthers or they work in a completely different industry, because I get these messages all the time, which is like, no, hey Jack, not everyone has the ability to earn as much as they want.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, fuck, the reality is, yes, everyone does have the ability to do that. Very few people will actually choose to do it.
Yeah.
So what, you studied at uni, you worked in like multiple different roles. Did you finish uni?
So I finished uni after 10 years, and I think Gabe finished it for me, and I paid everyone to do my exam. So
fuck yeah.
We could say I've got a certificate, but let's say...
That is called outsourcing.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
That's what that's called.
But
That's called Business 101.
The point there, though, is that you definitely do not need a degree to get into tech sales.
So that's what I was going to say. Like, you did all these things, you had a uni degree, which doesn't sound like it was finished at the point in time.
No.
And then when you got into tech... Was it just like what did they ask? Were they like, hey, can you show us your CV? Can you show us your university? Or what uni did you go to? Did they ask any of that shit, or was it just like, are you capable to do the job?
Sure.
Yes or no?
So there's like two avenues I would say for people that are wanting to get into tech.
Yeah.
I'm 5 years younger than Gabe, so I felt like I had a little bit more time to start as a junior.
Yeah.
To get into tech and then sort of move up the ranks. Where Gabe got out of the army. And she had more experience than me. She was like very high ranked in the army.
Right.
And so she pivoted more into like a senior role. But there's different parts to the ecosystem in the technology space, which is like the vendor, and the vendor sells the software, right? So they sell the solution or the outcome, really.
Right.
Then you have the channel. And the channel is like your partner's distributions, and your partners like are reselling the software and they're implementing the software for you.
Okay.
And so Gabe actually started in the channel, whereas I directly started with the vendor who sells the software.
Right. Give us an example of like some big companies that everyone would know, like vendor versus.
So in the as a vendor, that would be like Atlassian, Canva, Go1. And then
so the guys who have developed the software.
Totally. Yeah. Like unicorn companies, etc.
Yeah. Henderson.
Yeah. And then you have like Kinso would be like what Frank's doing. That would be a
vendor.
A vendor.
Yeah.
And then there's obviously B2B or B2C, but then you have the channel, and you would think of like Deloitte, sort of those big four consultings, but then you have these more niche partners like CyberCX that just recently got acquired for $1 billion. But yeah, your Fujitsu, NTTs and things like that.
Right. So essentially they're reselling the product that another company has developed. They're making a small margin on that. Yeah, cool.
And now, so back to the point of how would you get into tech?
Well, how you got into it, right? Because it wasn't like you had you had a history in tech, like, or anything like that.
Really, like, I'll tell my story about, I just helped Ebony, my sister, get a job in tech.
Right.
4 weeks ago.
There we go. All right, let's do it.
She was in childcare.
There we go.
5 years, she was in childcare, earning, hopefully she doesn't mind me saying this, like 40 to 50K a year.
Yeah.
And I was like, and she genuinely loved her job, but I'm like, you can't do this long term. Like, it's hard to live. She then did a really good interim step, which I don't necessarily think you need to do, but Eb did it perfect. I think she went and just got a call center job. She was there for, I think just shy of a year, and then applied.
And what was the reason for that?
Yeah, so
like, what was the reason she went and did that sort of?
Yeah, so the call contact center is like, it just shows grit. It shows like when you do become a sales development representative, where I started in the technology space, which is like the most junior role you can get, but you still could earn 100K a year. It's all, outbounding, finding leads and booking
Yeah.
those for your account managers.
So she did that to learn, like, hey, I'm
just-
not just looking after kids and doing all
Yeah.
that stuff now. I've got to go outbound and learn
Well,
how to sell.
anyone getting into tech, right? Like a company that's hiring an SDR role, sales development role, or business development role, they know you're not going to have years of experience. They want the junior folks that are like hungry, ready to put in the hours,
Yeah.
and just show the characteristics.
That's right.
And Ebony showed
To
that.
then progress to whatever.
exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then Eb went through that transition of going through that. Again, similar things to what I'm talking around just like the channel vendors. You just got to learn a little bit of that vernacular because it is a whole new world of like talking
Yeah.
to different words.
Vernacular is a big word.
Vernacular.
Didn't learn
is.
that at Windsor High School, let me tell you.
But yeah, my story too was very similar to Eb. Obviously, I did have that similar experience in Panthers being a sales rep.
Yeah.
But because then I would say like more senior at Panthers, but then I had to go a bit more junior to get into a tech role. But I was earning already almost double just going
Yeah.
into tech. So depending on where you want to start, and then as I mentioned, Gabe as well, she pivoted a bit more older than me into a bit more of a senior role. But I like to think like the vendor selling the software is like that's where you want to get to,
Right.
is my viewpoint. Because that's what I was talking to my story. That's where you can get the equity, the shares to IPO, get sold out and things like that and go on that journey to be able to create more wealth for yourself.
As all the Canva employees just did the other day, I seen there was a big
Exactly.
share buyback.
Yeah, exactly.
Got to get onto them as clients. Cool. So essentially, in short, you did, and your sister just did, got into tech without any technology. Like, it's not like you guys were nerds geeking out in the basement, like building shit, you know, like you got in through a sales channel, which you can get into any organization, but the upside in tech is wild.
Yeah, and that's a great point to highlight. You don't need tech experience. Like I get a lot of DMs is just like, yeah, but I don't know tech or I'm not technical. When you are in a, because every business sells their solution or service different.
Yeah.
I'm the front-facing person to connect the person with how can that software drive the outcome for the business. For example, you're going through your experience deploying AI to acquire more houses and
Gabe's
things
company.
like that. Exactly. But really, that is like a sales side. Then you have the technical resource that helps you with all that more detail side of things.
Yeah.
So there's almost those two levers that you need to pull there for that as well.
And fingers crossed you work for a tech company where their software ideally sells, 80% of it sells itself, and then you just do the 20%.
Yeah, and that's a really big thing too. I think if you are got no experience, sometimes it's hard to land those tier 1, tier 2 vendors to get
Yeah.
started with, and that's just truth and facts. But if you
Yeah.
can start at a tier 3 and then work your way up, that's also another approach to be able to do that. I would say
And
someone
essentially, like the difference between tier 1 and tier 3, what would be a tier 1 company versus a
like
tier
someone
3?
trying to truly get into a job at Canva straight away, like
Yeah.
that is going to be hard. It's very
Right.
competitive. But there's like a company called Go1. They're an education platform. They're 600 employees in Australia. They're doing really well as a software company, and they're just about to go global. Like I think that's a really good place to start. Where I
And
think they
600
would hire
employees
you.
in a company like that is small, right?
It's small for
in
a tech
comparison
company.
to, the tens of thousands.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, Google would have, hundreds of thousands or millions, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. Or hundreds of thousands, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think back to your point as well, like I would definitely recommend cybersecurity and AI to go into as two levers. Everyone needs to have security things in place, otherwise
Yeah.
it ruins your brand. And AI, there was a study that just came out from MIT, which is a really large university in the US, talking about 95% of investments in AI are failing at the moment. And it's literally because
ours.
it's literally because like everyone's just learning right now, right? But you still need to be making the investments to get ahead, because that one investment that can pay off can make you millions and millions, or if not billions of dollars as well.
For sure.
So we're in this really sweet spot right now of like how the even industry has changed from like, we went from mobile social media and now we're going into like this, like we went to cloud and now this AI boom. It's such a good time to get into the industry.
And we have a huge amount of clients that are in cyber. Lots. And they've all made lots of cash.
Yeah, and that's like, I'm AI, Gabe Cyber.
Yeah. Wiz. Should have got
Yeah,
him.
should've
Got him
gone to
Wiz
Wiz.
early.
Yeah.
A few clients did, and they made bank. So let's talk high level numbers. So you went from, what were you earning at like Panthers and that?
So I was 60K at Panthers.
Yeah.
And now the past 2 years, I've made over 350,000 per year.
Crazy. At 28.
Yeah.
There you go. From Pitt Town. We may as well just shut it off there. There we go. That's how you do it, folks. But everyone's been listening intently to then learn what you do with that money and what you and Gabe have done with that money. So let's go back to 2000. What are we in now? 25? Was it 24 or 23 that we started?
Yeah, our first property that we've purchased, which if you go to that other one, I think that was
Second
about
page.
18 months ago. So
There it is.
Yeah.
23.
23.
October 2023.
Yeah.
Right there. So a few things happened. So we actually spoke probably 12 months prior to that. It was 2022 we spoke. And I remember the conversation was all around, there was like a potential for you to move to Coffs Harbour or something.
Oh, we could be living anywhere. Like,
you were like, I think I might go to Coffs. And then you were like potentially going to buy an owner-occupier on the North Shore.
And even did a bit of like personal development for me. I actually grew up in like 10 different houses when I was growing up.
Right.
And Gabe actually was like in the army, lived all in different places. I've actually just come to realize like rent vesting is the way for me because it's just like, I want to experience new places and things like that. So it's actually worked out like that is a better lifestyle for me than to commit to a house.
And you
for 30
travel
years.
a lot for work.
So
and
much.
Like you do shit, right? So like being fixed to one location, having a big mortgage, not ideal. Totally. Maybe ideal later down the track, but not right now. Another thing I want to talk through before we start talking through the investment portfolio is, combined income for you guys now is 800,000 plus, right? A lot of dough for young ladies. But you haven't gone and rented like, the big house in wherever, Bronte or bloody, the North Shore or anything like that. Like, were you living in a granny flat recently or still are?
Yeah, so
cool.
If I just backtrack to like when me and Gabe met, let's just say we were net $50,000 with like bad debt tied to our name. So over that whole period of time.
What did you spend the money on?
Well, I was positive when I met Gabe. Gabe was the net. Wanted to deck out her furniture with a personal loan.
Yeah. Where did we go? King furniture and stuff like that?
But that whole experience is like the whole point there is that from that moment when we knew we wanted to like build our wealth, we actually started and we decided to go live in a studio apartment. So we already made that sacrifice from day one to like live in a smaller place together. And then we did upsize a little bit when we started to earn a little bit more money just because we had like a dog and a cat and we're all sharing the same space. But our whole goal over this whole past 7 years is always to be able to save 50% of our income that we've earned essentially. Yeah. And we actually did start to rent a place, like it was $1,350 a week, but my sister was living with us. And we probably hit that point where it's like, we've got a really big house now. It's like...
Where was that?
Yeah, that was in Narrabeen.
That's where you were going to buy Narrabeen.
Yeah. And that's when we got back in contact with you.
Yeah.
But just recently, so we moved up to the Central Coast 18 months ago and really fortunate for my dad to have finished building a property and he has a little granny flat on the back. So we've moved back in there, like paying a bit of rent, but obviously made that sacrifice again to be able to go and purchase now like our third, and we have plenty of room to buy like fourth and fifth property now.
Yeah, your serviceability, like you're not constrained by serviceability at all.
No.
Yeah. So that's a very, very important thing for the listeners is like, regardless if you earn $800,000 a year or you earn $80,000 a year, like if you can live below your means, it means everything's going to happen way faster, right? It's obviously harder to live below your means at $80,000 than it is at $800,000, but it's also very easy to have lifestyle creep, right? Like the reality is you girls could live in a $2,000 or $3,000 a week place, you could be eating out every night, you could drive European cars and all that shit, you could go on overseas holidays, like you could do all of those things really easily, but you're not. So back in 2023, fuck it, I can't believe it's 2023. It's so crazy. First property. Let's talk about how we landed on how this all come about. So we obviously started working together. What was your perspective, perspective on property and investing at the time?
Yeah, so we obviously spoke with you the first time.
Yeah.
And we're ready to go buy a property, but it was like a first home buyers.
Yeah.
We then spent 12 months like just going so deep on like truly what we wanted to do, read all the books, the podcasts and things like that. During that time we had got started with stocks, so we probably had about $150K at that point in stocks that we had
just
invested.
Just tech stocks that like were sort of similar to what you used to doing?
That was like in ETFs, like not even part of our companies, like A200 and things like that. But it was a real big unlock at that point when we kept reading more books where it's like, okay, we have $150K and we just got like $5K back for the year. And then when you obviously buy $1 million property and then you get like 5% return on that, that's already $50,000, for example.
So you're leveraging your money versus not leveraging your money, right?
Exactly. And that was like, once I fully understood that, like it was just like a no-brainer for me to be able to do that. And obviously when we then re-engaged with you, we sat down, had like a big strategy session around, that can be the end goal. At any point
were you like, fuck, should I really be listening to this guy who I
was going to say this. So a bit of backstory. About 12 months before re-engaging with you, Gabe said, I have a friend from high school and he's a financial advisor. Let's connect with him.
Right.
Really lovely guy, just didn't work out. And then about 2 months, like, a couple months later, I go, Gabe,
I got a mate from high school.
I got a mate from high school. And Gabe's like, so were you good friends with him? Like, sussing him. I'm like, I got a friend from high school, and then we got
He was
up.
loose, this
And the
bloke.
thing is, though, like, actually, I believe like your personality and Gabe's personality
Very
are
similar.
very similar.
Yeah.
And
I think the same thing when we talk.
so it was like it all worked out, but it was funny. A very funny story around that.
Probably, you wouldn't
But
think,
to
you
your
wouldn't
point,
think
Jack,
at school
too-
like someone you'd listen to, right?
Yeah, but you know, like not to blow smoke up your ass here too, but
Please do
you're actually
Please do
you're
it.
actually the only one I know that has like that I know, well, in quotes, successful, whatever you want to
Yeah,
call
yeah.
that, and it's like actually very cool to see and like connect on that how we grew up, and then it's all it is just like a limit or a belief.
It's one mindset piece,
Yeah,
right? I
and
know
an
it's-
action
It's
piece.
action and mindset. I
Yeah.
think because I think for me it was because like I was not intelligent enough to work out the issue intelligent people have versus me is intelligent people overanalyze everything. They're like, oh, what happens if this happens and this happens and blah blah blah. Where I was just too dumb and I was like, worst
Yeah.
case scenario is I keep working in construction. Can't be that bad.
Yeah.
You know, and then obviously you learn a little bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's been cool to watch your journey.
Thank you.
It's
It's
great.
been very cool to watch your journey as we're going to unfold now. So back in 2023, I get another thing which is probably a topic to cover off is we bought an apartment in Newcastle of all places. Not a house, not in Sydney, not where you grew up. We bought an apartment. Was there any reservations on when I recommended an apartment?
So the whole reason there, back to buying a property with your partner, is like that risk threshold.
Yeah.
Definitely for that first one. Like if I go back in time now, I fully would have felt more comfortable to buy a property that was probably $1 million to get started with.
Yeah.
But to get started with, I was like, no, Gabe, like we're going low, like to see how this plays out.
We're going
and
400
I think we had
Bundaberg.
landed at that point. I think that we knew we had the cash at that point in time that we could like execute tomorrow.
Yeah.
But also didn't want to like over leverage as well because like I'm more low risk, and
Yeah.
so we sort of ended up there. Based on those
So
two
we
things.
spent $690 on the first property.
Yep.
Went in with an 88% LVR, is that right?
Yep.
88% LVR. And then within a few months, we had a reval done. Everyone loves a good desktop valuation,
Yeah.
by the way. And then you guys pulled out nearly all the money you put back in of 75
Exactly.
grand.
Yep.
That was January 24. So what was that? November, December, January, 3 months' time.
Yep. 3 months exactly. And at that point in time, like the time that the house settles, like that was like a couple months, and you
Yeah.
keep saving up more money again, and we still had a bit of a cash buffer.
Yeah.
And when we purchased Nesca, so when we had pulled that money out from Nesca after
Yeah.
a couple months, we were already ready to go for property
Property
two.
number 2. Yeah. And Nesca's value now is 870. Is that based on the most recent valuation that we've had done?
Yep.
So what's that? 200-ish thousand in growth in what? 18 months.
18 months.
There we go. Was it scary? Were you like, fuck?
Yeah, it was definitely like a daunting experience,
Yeah.
like committing to doing this. I think, you always have that commitment of like, this is a long-term strategy. Definitely got to get used to that because it's like, sales is a high pressure job. You always got to be meeting demands, quota and things like that.
And it can
it's
change
like,
really quickly,
Can
right?
change really
Yeah.
quickly. So it's always important to like go off like, I believe like your base to keep investing than the commission
Yeah.
as well, because that can always be a downturn. But I
That's
think
also a conservative approach as well, which is
conservative approach.
good.
Yeah, and I think though why I got comfortable is because of all those factors, right? Is what made me sleep at night factor. Like I think we had like a 6-month emergency fund, which Gabe would probably like 1 month. But all these things in place
David
made
already
me
spent
feel
it on furniture. She's like,
comfortable.
fuck, you wouldn't believe it.
But I think
We're refurnishing.
literally. But I think the main thing is like the worst case again, we could sell the properties, or I don't do anything, and I'm in the same situation 10 years down the track, which
Yeah.
I see very often with a lot of people. So
Everyone.
it's just like that, not fear, but like that drive to that made me want to do it.
Yeah. And then we also had the plan, right? Where you could see like,
Yeah.
hey, this property is, if it grows by X, it's going to cost you Y to own.
Yeah.
And like you said, the worst case scenario is if it doesn't work out, you can't afford it anymore, or you just choose a different avenue, you sell the property.
Totally. But yeah, big piece of that going through with you was like the game plan of like long term, how can we actually, like, what does this strategy look like? Because I think once you got that 30-year plan, 40-year plan, it's just like, that's fine. Just
The funny thing is, like, it's easy to build out in software, and people go, "Oh fuck, that'll never happen." Like when I show clients numbers, like, "Hey, this is where you're going to start. This is where you're going to end up." I know there's like an element of doubt where they're like, "That won't happen."
yeah.
And then when you actually start to go on that journey, it's like it actually does happen.
It does
And the
happen.
only reason it won't happen is if you don't take the action to make that happen.
100%.
Which you guys have done in droves. And then February 2024, so say 6 months later, property 2, that's funded by the $75,000 worth of equity we pulled out of property number 1,
Yep.
which was 75% of the original money you put in, plus then cash on top that you had left over,
Yeah,
which is about
exactly.
80 grand. So you had 150 odd thousand bucks.
Yep. Yep.
Cool.
Exactly.
Let's talk through that. Second property, same location, Newcastle. Talk through the strategy
Yeah,
there.
so the first one, again, it's been a cool experience now having an apartment and obviously this property now because it's just a house and we built the granny flat and done the YAM strategy on that.
YAM!
And we'll talk through those numbers in a second, but that's been cool. Obviously, you have those other fees with the apartment with like strata and things like that. This one, though, we obviously wanted to go a house. I was more comfortable with like let's definitely do like a higher bucket.
Yeah.
I think working with yourself and Frank when we purchased like 1 and 2 properties as well is like when you're going through that process purchasing with Henderson Group, it's like you guys are sending through properties and going, even if we're not going to purchase that one, you're sending through like options saying like, hey, this is what this one's sold for. Or it's like, this is an idea, but it's like doesn't have the sun and things like that. So we get educated like through that whole process.
Yeah.
And we feel
And
very
Frankie
much...
loves.
Yeah.
R.I.P. Frank, right? Like he's retiring, the poor bastard.
I know.
But,
we know we're with Farrat and Trent, so we're all good.
The boys.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, the education piece is super important
so
with what we do,
important.
right? Because then it helps you guys understand, okay, this is why we're buying this versus us just going,
100%.
yeah, go buy it. It's a great property.
Yeah.
You have the context around why.
Definitely. And I don't actually recall, Gabe, maybe you recall, the plan was to build a granny flat with, I don't know if it was to build a granny flat ideally. It was just
sure.
like we could. And then when we purchased it, we're like, okay, let's definitely build the granny flat during
I think
that.
we bought that before we actually like full on had that YAM strategy and Endeavour was like,
Yeah, you guys are just kicking it off.
proper up and running.
Good
Yeah.
site for it.
And you were like, all right, let the other clients be the test dummies and we'll come in a few months' time.
Yeah.
But essentially we bought that with 155 grand, which is a combination of spare cash plus equity you pulled out of property number 1. It was purchased for $845,000. And then we've just recently finished, I say 12 months on, building the granny flat. How did you guys fund that?
Yeah, so we did worked with Jeremy and he was able to get the construction loan.
Yep.
So again, didn't pay any money out of pocket. We got the vals done that the property would be worth X amount.
As if complete valuations?
Exactly.
Yep. So they essentially just used the what it would be worth finished val to then give you the money to fund it.
Exactly. So like that was again mind-blowing experience just to not have to put cash in.
Yeah.
We did the granny flat. And then once we had got the tenants in during the granny flat, or the granny flat now and the property rented out, we were actually like $100 away from, positively geared. Like we're almost neutral.
So $1,350 a week it's rented for now. And that asset's valued at 1.2.
Yep.
Cool. And it's cash flow neutral. And what about property number 1? What's that costing to own?
So it's out of pocket or about just over $1,000. We've obviously now done the revals on both properties and we've just pulled out. We had $280,000 land in our account 2 days ago to now go purchase property 3. So again, we won't need to use any cash at all for property 3.
Let's go straight to the pub after this. We'll make that like 260, I reckon.
But like that, on that first property, like definitely the hardest one is buying the first property. Once you get the first property, it's like, it's a crazy.
It becomes a game,
It
right?
does.
Like the
time and market.
The thing that you guys have cracked, which is, I suppose a big part of this podcast is the income piece, right? Which is the thing people really struggle to crack. Like, if you can't crack the income piece, the property thing becomes really hard, right? Because you have cash flow constraints to actually how much you can afford to pay for out-of-pocket expenses. You have serviceability constraints. But if you can crack the code with how do I just earn more money, like all this stuff becomes simple.
Yeah.
Because $1,000, what's the hill costing? $1,000 a month? Roughly?
Just over $1,000. Oh, it's like a $4,500 mortgage, but then with people renting it out, we're about like 1.5K
a month.
A month out of pocket.
Cool. So what's that? Roughly 20 grand a year, give or take.
So we've worked basically out with once we purchase property 3, which is going to be around a $1.2 million place, which we'll chat through, but it's going to be about 70 to 80K out of pocket per year.
Pre-tax.
And which we were discussing, we are basically saving 20K per year. So that's well and truly still covering the
20K
per month. Yeah, so
per
we're saving
year,
that.
Fuck me.
Yeah, per month.
Where's the other 780 going?
So yeah, still being able to service all those.
Yeah.
Then going through our first year, being able to negatively gear that with our tax strategy as well.
Yeah. And because you guys are paying 47 cents on the majority of your income, essentially that means if the properties are costing you 60 to 80 grand a year to hold, you're going to get almost 50% of that back, right? So it goes from being 60 to 80 grand, let's say it's 70 grand out of pocket before your deductions, to then $35,000 after you get your deductions back.
Yeah.
And when you then look at that versus how much you earn to carry, what, $3-ish million, just over $3 million worth of assets?
Yeah.
Not that much, right?
Yeah, and I've just pivoted too as well, like going to the PayG model. So instead of waiting for the end of the year, just getting that on a monthly basis.
Let's talk through that. So the PAYG tax variation, right? So how do you get paid? Is it weekly, fortnightly, monthly?
I get paid, monthly.
And then like bonuses come quarterly or something?
They come within 45 days after me closing a deal.
Yeah, right. Okay. So essentially what Kayla was talking about there is the PAYG tax variation. So instead of paying all this tax out, giving the ATO an interest-free loan, and then after June 30, then doing your tax return, then getting it. Like the reality is most people don't do their tax return until the following year. You are essentially now getting your tax back in every pay packet. So instead of paying whatever you are paying in tax, you'll pay a little bit less. So you've got a higher net income. And then your tax return at the end of financial year will be much lower. But it's helped with cash flow, right?
Cash flow. Yeah, exactly.
So you said property 1, property 2, built the granny. This and remember, this is all within, what are we in now? August 25. This is like within 2 years.
2 years, yeah. Property
3 is being purchased with the $280,000 worth of equity that have come out of property 1 and property 2 after building a granny flat as well, of which it cost you zero other than the approvals and stuff like that you pay for with cash. And that's going to be Brisbane Gold Coast, $1.2 million asset with the YAM potential. So we can obviously make it cash flow neutral as fast as possible. Let's talk through why we went to Queensland versus staying within New South Wales.
Yeah, so one of those big reasons were like diversification being one, but the other main one was around the tax threshold. So that was, again,
the land tax.
Land tax, yeah. So maybe you can talk to that because that's like a new space to me, but that is part of it.
It's Jack's bane of my existence. That's what it is.
Yeah.
So it's obviously as you buy more property in one state, I own all my properties in New South Wales. And in New South Wales, when you hit your threshold of $1,075,000, which I would say you're probably just on the cusp of, you then start to pay 1.6% of every land value dollar above that. So, when you own lots and lots of properties, it costs lots and lots of money in land tax, which is essentially the way that I look at this land tax. The land tax bill is like the unrealised capital gains tax. Everyone thinks it's like upsetting because they're going to do this in super. It's like we're already doing that with land tax. You pay 1.6% every year on an increased land value of an asset that you haven't sold. So the reason we went to Queensland is so we can buy probably another 2 assets up there and the same thing, have no land tax, which just means you can keep growing your portfolio with less expense. Eventually you'll hit the land tax threshold in the major states that we buy, and then you're going to have to start paying it. But the longer we can push that down the road, the better.
So that experience has been really great. Kick that off with obviously Farrat and Trent. And again, back to the point around just like the education, new states, so learning new things. It's like they don't even, when they do auctions, they don't even have set sort of a price and things like that.
I don't have to tell you what the price is.
So learning a lot through that process as well. And I think the big thing with like the Henderson Group, like, we have we're like 1.2 mil. And it's like you guys are never pushy in terms of like trying to push more. Or it's like our final decision. It's our final decision through all that, which is really good.
Lender's mortgage insurance. You paid a little bit of lender's mortgage insurance?
Yeah, we do.
Yeah. And what are your thoughts on that? Because a lot of people get caught up in that, right? They're like, I don't want to pay lender's mortgage insurance, which for people who don't know is an insurance you pay on behalf of the bank. It doesn't even insure you, it insures the bank if you go in with a less than a 20% deposit, if you're not someone who's in legal or accounting or a specialist field. So you guys are paying a little bit of lender's mortgage insurance, but the reason for that is so you can get into the market sooner, right?
Market sooner, buy more properties. And I think when you've mapped out that whole like 30-year strategy, and then if you whether that's to downsell and then like pay it out or whatnot, like you just got to look at that macro view to be like, it really doesn't matter. And especially when you get started and feel that feeling of like the equity growing, it's almost like outweighing that anyways.
Yeah. And I mean, to see you've got $280,000 of equity coming out of the first 2 after already pulling 75 out of the first one. So $350,000 worth of equity total, and you put in 100,000 of original cash, right? So you're like 3.5x your original cash position. So paying a little bit of lender's mortgage insurance when you've already made 250 grand net is not a bad thing.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
So the goal is by 2027, which is next year, 5 mil total assets from zero in the end of 2023, essentially.
Yeah, so we're in 2025 now. So let's say a year and a half.
Smoke that.
yeah, another year and a half. That's definitely our goal. And I think at this point in time, it's like our goal is to acquire $5 million of property and then just sort of let that go for that period of time and see where that leads us.
We need to add a zero to that $50 million. Another interesting thing, which I've just noticed since I've been reading this paper, is we started at a $690 purchase, then we slowly moved up to an $845 purchase. Now we've moved up to a $1.2 million purchase, of which, by the time you add the granny flat, you're talking, say, a $1.5 million purchase. Any like thoughts around or like how your comfort level has changed from like just the dollar amount? 'Cause people get caught up on that too, right? They get a pre-approval or they get the capacity of like $1 million. They're like, oh no, I'll spend 800 because I just want to be conservative.
Yeah, it's just totally. One, definitely going through it makes you way more comfortable is like the biggest thing. The belief of just like paying it back doesn't make your lifestyle worse and things like that is a really big one. Like I definitely wish I want to say I wish I started with $1 million property.
Yeah.
But it's not reality based on who I am and wanting to learn through that. But now understanding, like even with the YAM strategy, building the granny flats, you can pull all these different levers. Like even if you want to go interest only, like there's a lot of these little things that you can toggle if things do get tight. Not over leverage, obviously.
To increase your cash flow position.
To increase the cash flow perspective. So that's given me a lot more comfortability. But again, when you have a property that's like $700K or $1.5 million and it's doing 10% growth, it's like obviously you want the bigger one, and then obviously there's a cost every time you acquire a property too. So it's just like, why not max out sort of where you can?
Both the cost in time and in money, right? Because a lot of people get caught up in like just the money cost, but like it takes time to acquire property. Like we do it every day, and it takes us months to find one and buy it. You miss out on properties. Like it's not like going down to the local IGA and just pulling one off the shelf and going, oh yeah, there's a property, add it to the portfolio. So
and even just our experience now, like we've had a few in Brizzy that we haven't acquired, and I'm just thinking like, thank God I'm not on my Sat day or whatever going and looking at this property.
Yeah, like Frat is. Fuck him.
I think that 1.2, like when we also went with Henderson, that first fee for the buyer's agent, like that was probably the biggest bit of money I'd spent in terms of like investing in myself.
You girls are on like the greatest deal ever.
Yeah, we know that. But at that time, it's also
that's
like...
what happens when you become an early client of Henderson.
But when you do that and you see the equity growth, you're like, that was the coolest thing to be like, wow, it is worth paying something for a good service. So that was really cool.
Well, I mean, the only reason I got into this business is because I used Chris Gray to buy my second property, and like if I look at what that made me now in comparison to 30 grand or whatever it was I paid him, it's pittance, right? It's like nothing. And then I've also seen the opposite of that, of like my parents went down the path of not paying for advice, getting advice from their accountant, buying two off the plan, selling it for less 11 years later.
Yeah.
And it's like, which was the more expensive advice, the 30,000 up front or the hundreds of thousands paid 11 years after you bought the wrong asset?
And obviously we've worked with you on our strategy or with this as well, but I think when we had paid that investment to go with a buyer's agent, we also were ready to then, like, we had seen Ben Nash and then he came on your podcast and then we actually invested in him, and again, not cheap, but was worth the investment to definitely made our money back.
Yeah, what did you get out of that? So Ben Nash, for people who don't know, you should go back through the podcast and listen, but Ben Nash, financial planner, he's been on here before. Smart guy, similar sort of mindset to us.
Yeah.
Obviously, we handle all the property side of things, right? We can assist with everything property related. I can give you general recommendations and stuff around accounting and who you should speak to and tax and, all that jazz. But Ben comes from a different perspective, right? Yep. And he's pro-property as well, which is good. Most planners are not pro-property. So what was it that you were hoping, or what was it you did get out of, sort of your relationship with Ben versus, what you got out of the relationship with us? And
totally. Well, like yours was very much like clear strategy on property and wealth, like creation. Also with us, myself and Gabe being high income earners though, and also like having equity and shares in our companies, we wanted to go with Ben Nash to look at our holistic strategy. So there was more to the piece of like stock, super, property as well.
Yeah.
And just like that, it's always nice to have that double feedback of like, we are on the right track with property. Why should we stick with property? I think it is important to highlight we're in Australia. We have good tax strategies around that as well. So it's like worth playing that game and playing it to our advantage as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, really with Ben, with Pivot Wealth, we were able to feel, again, way more comfortable with our strategy. We were able to look back at like little things like looking back at 5 years ago from our super and being able to top that up to the max of $30,000, but then get the tax savings there. So all in all, like, his price for that we paid for, and again, the ROI for that has been like 4 or 5x just from little tax strategies and things like that we've been able to do.
Which is like those catch-up contributions, right? So like now you're paying all this tax, but if you go back 5 years when you're earning less money, you could have contributed, say, probably 25,000 a year or 27,500 that year, but you probably only, put in 7.
Yeah, and just making sure like your investments in your supers are also the right investments.
Which a lot of people would have fucking zilch idea about where their money's invested. They're like, oh yeah, I'm invested in like Australian Super, and you're like, yeah, but Australian Super is just a company that invests on your behalf.
Totally.
So it's like, where is your money actually invested?
Yeah. So all that. And then we, at the back end of even purchasing Property 3, we sat down with them and it's like, okay, what do you think we should do? And based on, again, our income and our strategy, what we wanted to do, like in the next 5-7 years or so, we wanted to like have the option to be able to reduce work a little bit.
Yeah.
Like that's the goal, the short-term goal.
Yeah.
And it's like, cool, let's go Property 3. Let's get that in the market. Let's get that going for the next, 5 to 7 years and see where we're at type thing. So it was backed by, we're on the right path of what we're doing.
Yeah. So having multiple people in your corner to give you advice around different things, not just having that one person that you go to. Even though I am amazing, having multiple people, just as I do, I have like an incredible accounting team that helps me with everything tax and to an extent wealth creation. I obviously am the property guy for my own benefit, but having people around me that are more intelligent around different facets of property. Having the right legal team and all that jazz, which will become important over time.
Yep.
It's super, super important. And
Absolutely.
It all costs money.
Totally.
That's the thing that people try and do shit by themselves or fucking, go online and look it up or ask someone who gives them free advice. And it's like generally, from my experience, it's the most expensive.
No, definitely.
Advice.
That's been the biggest thing the past 2 years is like investing in good services. You definitely get like your ROI. You still have like near misses, but it's,
of course.
Yeah, it's been.
But even with the near misses, you learn. Like, that's the best thing. It's like you learn what good and bad is. And you're like, oh, fuck, that wasn't that great.
Absolutely.
I do all the time. Every time I do something and I'm like, oh, that was shit service. But I look at it now through like, what can I do in my business to make sure that I don't have clients that feel like that.
Absolutely.
So goal is 5 million in assets by 2027. That'll get smoked, I would say, next year. With the growth of the existing asset base, which will be just over $3 million. You add another $1.5-ish million property in there and you're already at the 5. You just said before the goal is to be able to have the ability to work less if we choose to. What does that actually mean? Like, everyone's like, oh, I want freedom. And off the back of that, why haven't you gone and bought your own home?
Good 2 questions. So the reason why I haven't bought our first home is like when you literally do the numbers and you see how much you're paying back just for your own mortgage, like it literally caps up like anything that you can invest in. And back to like we're now living across the road from the beach, but even prior to that we moved from the Hawkesbury into Sydney, and just being able to have the choice to be able to go live in different places, definitely for mine and Gabe's lifestyle, with how much we do travel for work, where we want to live and just experience new places, that works for us. But we're not also tied to I actually have more of a fear of thinking about staying in one place for 30 years.
Me too. It's depressing.
Yeah, it's depressing to me. So that it does work in that favour for me to go into that. But when you really understand the numbers, it makes me cringe to think we would pay $5,000 a month just on a mortgage to live there, and then we're sort of stuck.
$5,000 a month too for shit place in reality. What's that $60,000 a year? What are you getting for $60,000 a year? A $900,000 house.
When you start to realise that too, when you're younger and you look at, I want to buy that property, then you actually go to do it. It's just no good. It's not working out.
No, at all.
So that's the reason why we Rentvest as well.
Yeah.
But then what was your other question?
The first question was around you want to have the ability to step away from it. What does that actually mean? Because a lot of people have that fantasy, and I talk about it all the time. They're like, oh, I want freedom and I want the ability not to work. And they're like, fuck yeah, let's go buy a 30-year mortgage or a house with a 30 mortgage and then spend 20 years paying that down to zero. And then even when it gets to zero, it doesn't give you the outcome that you want, which is freedom, because even though you don't have a mortgage, you still have to get up and go to work because you have no income.
Totally. Well, I'm definitely driven by a lot of parents and just ecosystem of I definitely don't want to be able to being at 50 still working. I want that choice to not be able to work. I also do know in my nature I am someone that's always going to want to work, even just from a brain longevity perspective. I actually don't want to stop working because I actually think that is depressing as well, and we just go backwards if you're not improving.
Frank?
Yeah, Frank, you're going to go backwards.
51.
But so that is one point. That might change. I'm 28 now. I think that's very easy for me to sit here and say that than be at 50 and I want to say that. But in 5 to 7 years, whether we have kids or not, but I think the whole point is to be able to have the option to be able to reduce, obviously working 5 days a week to 3 or 4 days a week, mainly 3 days a week, to be able to do that. And I think another big lever here is how can we get ourselves into a position where we also want to start our side business or start our own business. We have that opportunity to be able to do that as well. So that's a really important part of the game.
Which essentially having the investments sets you up to do that, right?
Absolutely.
versus having a home, which you could do, like you assume that you had a $3 or $4 million home, which you have the capacity to do, that would actually limit your ability to do that because you have no flexible living cost. It's like this is the mortgage you have to pay every month. That doesn't really do anything for you, and it would make starting a business much harder. Yeah, because you got it fixed.
Totally. Yeah. So that's always going to be a balance for us as well as we go on. Is like property 4, property 5. How much do we leverage before like we want to do our own thing, and what does that look like? So that's more of like a personal thing that we're going to have to go through and experience that. Yeah. But certainly, I'm also excited about the building their own business side of things to see how, because then you can go even uncapped, earning potentials, and that actually creates more of a potential to build, get more assets as well.
For sure. You guys are at a dilemma that I didn't face. I faced the dilemma of having to go and find more money because I couldn't afford to buy any more property. Where you have the dilemma now where you have more than enough capacity to keep investing, but you'll have to eventually stop because you won't be able to start a business if you keep going because then you'll require that income to service it.
Absolutely.
Which is where I am now. Like I require my business to service my stuff if I've only got a job now.
For sure. And I think
I'd last 3 seconds.
Yeah, the whole mindset shift though, I think anyone can resonate with. I think when you have the choice, when you're not tied to or have to do something, like if I got the option to not work, but then I am choosing to work, it's just like a way better.
Completely different.
So why wouldn't you want to create that for yourself?
The thing that I love most about my life is not one person can tell me what to do. I can tell anyone I want to get fucked.
Yeah.
That's the best feeling in the world.
Yeah,
like,
I think.
Genuinely. Totally. Like getting up every morning going, I don't have to do anything anyone tells me to do. Yeah.
My opinion is, I think if you start your own business, it makes you have to level up to a whole other level. You have no like safety net, but it also brings out the most authentic version of that person because you're not tied to like what I think like in a political structure of a corporate
like
business as well.
If you work in an environment where you have to act a certain way, you're generally not the real you versus. Inside of a business, you still go through that. Like, I've learned how to be a leader, a better leader than I was when I, began working. And you go through like these identity shifts where you're like,
but see, it's pushed you to like have to do that, right?
Yeah, it pushes you to have to do it if you want to continue to grow, right? Like a lot of people, they blame the externals for their business not growing. It's like it's always someone else's fault. Oh, the government's too high, the taxes too much. And it's like the reality is the reason there's Canvas in the world is because they grew that company there. It wasn't by luck.
Yep.
And the reason that a lot of businesses struggle, again, is because of the leader of that business.
Absolutely.
So, like, if the business is continuing to grow, it's generally a good reflection of the leader in that business, I would say.
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
And when we've gone through periods of stagnation, it's generally been because of me. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So have we mapped out, whether it's through us or whether it's with, Ben's team, when you'll actually have the ability to chill, go 3 days a week?
Yeah, I'd say...
Or like, what's the number that we're going? Like, we're talking 5 mil gross assets by, 2027.
Yeah.
What does it actually need to look like to not work as much as you are now?
Yeah. So I'm. There's 2 pillars that I am playing with right now. Is like that whole Chris Gray model, which is like sort of your model of like, do you actually never sell the properties, or do you sell down the properties and pay back the mortgage and then have the rest of the asset left. Mm-hmm. So we're sort of playing with that, but I'd say 7 years from now is like we have the option to be able to make that decision, what we want to do.
Yeah. So sell down some assets if you want to, pay down some debt. That then increases the income that comes off those assets, or you invest in other assets that produce more income.
Yeah.
Or just keep hustling and never sell.
Exactly.
Yeah. And look, Chris had the mindset of never selling, but he's in his 50s now and he's just sold a heap of assets. He's got now some that are unencumbered. But he sold when the time was right, not before then.
Yeah.
What about the savings rate? So where did the 50% savings rate come from? And like that's a goal that you guys are still, so as you increase your income, you increase your spending capacity by a little bit, but you also increase your savings rate.
Oh, look, I don't remember where I exactly found it, but I'm pretty sure like in Australia, like most people only save like 10 or 20% of their, really low of their income.
I'm pretty sure I'm negative.
So
you're asset rich.
That's right.
So that's sort of where it came from, but obviously once we've sort of locked on a number and we've done it like 2 years in a row, it's like you don't want to then not do it.
That's a new standard, right?
Yeah, it's a new standard. Yeah. So we've always like maneuvered our lifestyle around to continue doing that.
Yeah.
So that's sort of where that came from. But again, if we can continue doing that, I think there's no reason we need to spend more than that. And it's always back to budgeting. It's just like, okay, what's the focus of this year? What's the goal of this year? Like this year we actually wanted to spend more and go on more holidays, but we're still doing that 50% savings rate.
Yeah.
So yeah, it just changes year on year, but I would say very strongly we want to be able to continue that over the next 7 years as well.
And lifestyle has changed a little bit. I've got my little note here that says sacrifices and hyperfocus. Mm-hmm. Don't drink anymore?
Yeah, so me
At
and
all?
Gabe's like 3 years completely sober, or
Solid.
not had a drink of alcohol. I probably drank like 5 times in the past like 4 years as well.
5 times in like
Yeah.
the past 4 days.
I haven't really drank since like 20 years old. So
That's it.
really, so that though for me is very much like I already knew from a young age I could not drink alcohol. I'd just go down a really bad path.
Yeah.
So I toy with that. Probably like in the past year, I'm officially I feel like I'm freedom of like never even thinking about it, which is a really
You're
beautiful
free
feeling.
of the alcoholic grip.
I am.
I still struggle with it.
Yeah, but it's taken a
Headlock.
lot of time. Yeah, but so that's a big sacrifice. I think how much you can just spend money on that when
Oh,
you're
yeah, all
going
the shit
out.
that it comes with.
Totally.
It's terrible.
And then the sacrifice obviously moving back in with a parent is obviously a big one because it's like
But even if we like pretend that you weren't living with like you're not living with your dad, but
Yeah.
on the same property, and you were living just in a granny flat,
Yeah.
like not many people will do that. That's what I always talk about that stuff, and it's like you can choose to
Yeah,
live
and-
for a lower expense, but people choose not to.
So we work in hybrid roles, so that's something that is fortunate. But
Yeah.
like my rule is like I will always work for a hybrid role because my end goal is to make as much money as I can in the year, but also live a great lifestyle outside of work. So
Yeah.
I absolutely love training, and it's like for me that's number one priority every single day. And then it's to invest outside of work.
Yeah.
There is so many granny flats. We now moved an hour. We have to travel onto the train back into the city when we have to come for work.
Yeah.
But it's worth that extra hour, though I'm a big believer on time. But the time I get back in being on the beach training each morning. But to the point there is like granny flats are like $500 you can rent out, $500-$600 you can rent out in a nice location if you're willing to
And they're
travel
like
a bit.
new as well, right?
They're
like,
all new because it's just like,
it's a relatively new thing.
yeah, exactly.
Mate, that granny flat on Sunda, that thing is an absolute
it's
beast.
beautiful.
I'd live in that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then also like running now is a big thing. We did a run once.
Yeah, we did.
Impressed me, I must say.
Yeah, absolutely.
You did Last Man Standing Ultra, 50K recently.
Yeah, so always, growing up sporty, did like the bodybuilding, like CrossFit, like lifting,
I
etc.
remember the bodybuilding.
Yeah, did the bodybuilding
Dan
scene.
Jones and that, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. But I think what's been a real unlock with the running and sort of the half Ironmans and things like that, it's purely focused on performance.
Yeah.
And it's not like a body thing or anything like that. And it just gives you like time out there. It's all just like mental game, which is like very, very fun. So yeah, recently did the 100K backyard ultra. And then I've got the half Ironman in 3 weeks to do a trial run. That's my first triathlon. And then going to send it for sub 6 hours in Busso in December.
Beast. Isn't it funny that like as you move in the direction of like personal development,
Yeah.
like you notice like success leads clues, right? Like everyone moves down that path of like being more conscious about their health, going out less and partying less and drinking less.
Yep.
There's always like an element of something which is like a high intensity sort of activity, whether it's like running or swimming or Ironmans or high rucks or all that shit. Like
Yep.
everyone sort of moves down that same avenue and very, very rarely now would you see someone who's successful that's unfit, that's a massive pisshead, that, eats unhealthily.
Yeah. Actually,
like years gone by, that was a thing, right? You'd have like a boss who's like
Totally.
a fat fucking pig.
100%.
And now I would say it's not really like that
when
from what I
I
see.
actually started at MoveWorks and my CEO came over to Australia and he was wearing like an Aura ring and running, I fell in love with him purely based on like, wow, this leader is actually caring about his health. Because I think a lot of, like, again, leading from the top, you should be caring about like your health, your fitness, like going to sleep and things like that, because it just doesn't have the longevity otherwise.
true.
And I think this new era that we are in, like I do think, like drinking's becoming less and less, I do think.
Yeah, it's like more cool now not to drink.
Yeah, it is.
Like before it was like,
Yeah.
it's cool to drink. Where now it's like if you drink, you're like, oh,
Yeah.
weirdo. I mean, in the circles that I hang in, right? Like,
Yeah.
I don't know if it's like that in other places, but
Yeah.
a lot of people don't drink now. Or they drink in like moderation, where it'd be like if they're overseas or, it's like special events or whatever.
Yeah. But yeah, being in tech, like it obviously in Penrith Pan, there's like very big drinking culture, going out, whining, dining and things like that. I do really think that whole element of like you are training for something and telling people that it is a good thing to say because it does, people respect that and don't want to sort of
100%.
push. So that does help.
And then on top of that, it's also like a big dog thing, you know. Like, that's why I keep doing the bigger and bigger runs. It's just good to always have something you can one up someone with. It's like I did 100K. I'm like, oh, did you? Did 330.
Yeah. For my ego, it does.
That's right.
It is a good topic
ego
starter.
booster.
Yeah.
But like you're starting to build a personal brand now, which is amazing to see. But all of those things like tie in, you know, with your brand. It's like,
absolutely.
You know, if I didn't have the personal fitness goals, I'd just be like a property guy, right? But like if you start to add all of these other things that, you know, that sort of makes you one.
And like obviously being sporty, I definitely wanted to make it pro as an athlete. But like women's sport there was like 20 grand a year. And like I made that choice very early on that I had to go work. And, you know, maybe back now it's fine. But at that point in time for me, like it wasn't really an option. And I always think like I've now created this perfect lifestyle for myself to be able to like, because I always loved training, not so much game day. And now I can just like, because like triathlons cost a lot. Like all these events cost a lot of money. Even like physio or sauna, ice bath, like you do need wealth and money to be able to do that comfortably. And I literally remember when I said, when I was younger, if I can afford a 90-minute massage every single week without not worrying about it and I tap it, I've made it. And like that happened a couple of years ago. And it's just like, it's such a cool feeling to be able to train.
Every time I have to go for a 90-minute massage, I have to look before I walk into the shop.
But like the point there, it's like I train like an athlete now more than I ever did, but because I do have the means to be able to do that as well.
For sure. And it all becomes way more interesting as well when you do have the means. Like as you make more money, you start to, I mean, I know I do, like, what's his name? Gary Brecker had like fucking protocol thing where did you see that? Where like the thing that he used for Dana White, you could buy like the red light therapy bed. And I was like 150 grand. I'm like, fuck, should I do it?
Yeah. I mean, like having your own chef, like that's just a perfect example.
Oh yeah, forget about that sometimes.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah. Well, that's why I did it. I was like, fuck, I eat like an absolute pig when I'm not here. And like when I say pig, I like just shit because like whatever's fast. Where now I'm like forced to have a really nice breakfast, a really nice lunch, and a really nice dinner 5 days a week at least.
Yeah.
Where are we going to go to from here? Where are we going to wrap up on? We've covered a lot.
We did cover a lot.
Pretty impressive shit.
No, I think just if you're someone that's on the edge of buying a property, get going. It's worth jumping in. You can only learn by doing. And
it becomes less scary the more you do, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. But yeah, big piece, obviously keep leveling up, keep upskilling. Everything is hard in life. Everything's competitive.
Oh, yeah.
But it's also pretty easy to like stand out if you just do something for a pretty consistent period of time. So just get started.
And focus on that income piece, right? Because it makes all of this shit so much easier. It makes being healthier easier. It makes investing easier. It makes life easier.
Yeah.
Very impressive. Thank you for coming on. Next episode, we'll do a Gabe-only potty, and then we'll do a joint potty.
That sounds great.
Good shit. Thank you.
Thanks, Jack.
This is general advice and does not take into consideration your objectives, situation, or needs. You should consider if this advice is suitable to you or your circumstances, and please read any applicable PDS beforehand. This is a Henderson podcast production.